Captain Arlen Hayes stood at the viewport of the diplomatic vessel Meridian's Hope, watching the obsidian spires of Cathara Prime rise from the planet's scarred surface like jagged teeth. No other species in the Galactic Council had set foot on this world in 300 years. The Cathali had made certain of that. "Captain, we're receiving their approach vector." Lieutenant Chen's voice crackled through the comm. "They're sending an escort of 20 warships." Arlen smiled faintly. "That's actually a warm welcome by their standards." The Cathali were legends whispered across 1,000 worlds. 7 feet of chitinous armor, 6 limbs ending in razor-sharp talons and a venom that could liquefy internal organs in seconds. They had won every war they'd ever fought. Their military doctrine was studied in every academy, though no one had ever witnessed their tactics and lived to report details. They were apex predators who had evolved on a death world where everything, even the plants, could kill, and they wanted to talk to humanity. The Meridian's Hope descended through Cathara's turbulent atmosphere, flanked by the Cathali escort. Each warship bristled with weapons that could crack a moon. Yet as they entered the landing pattern, Arlen noticed something unusual in the footage from the external cameras. Among the military vessels were smaller craft, their hulls painted with symbols he'd learned meant sanctuary in the Cathali language. The landing was smooth. When the airlock opened, Arlen stepped out alone as protocol demanded. The Cathali didn't trust crowds. Vedra waited at the base of the ramp. The Cathali matriarch was a sight that had sent seasoned warriors fleeing. Her exoskeleton bore the scars of countless battles, each one a story of survival. Her 4 eyes, arranged in a diamond pattern, fixed on Arlen with an intensity that most beings couldn't withstand. But Arlen had learned something during his years as a diplomat. Fear was just information. The Cathali could smell terror, could taste it in the air, but they could also recognize its absence. "Captain Hayes." Vedra's voice emerged from her translator as a deep, resonant tone. "You came alone." "You asked me to," Arlen replied simply. One of Vedra's secondary arms made a gesture that Arlen had learned meant approval. "The Council said humans were foolish. They said you would send an army or send no one at all. The Council doesn't understand us very well." "No," Vedra agreed. "They do not come. We have much to discuss, and little time." She led him through corridors carved from living rock, past chambers where Cathali warriors trained in combat techniques that seemed more like lethal dances. Young Cathali watched from alcoves, their smaller forms still bearing the characteristic armor plates and talons that would one day make them feared. Across the galaxy, they arrived at a chamber unlike any Arlen had seen in the Cathali architecture briefings. It was warm, almost humid, and filled with soft bioluminescent light. Across one entire wall, transparent barriers revealed dozens of small chambers, each containing what Arlen realized with shock were Cathali eggs. "Our nursery," Vedra said quietly. "The heart of our species. The reason I have brought you here." Arlen approached the barrier slowly. The eggs were beautiful, iridescent shells that seemed to shift colors in the soft light. "Matriarch, I'm honored, but I don't understand." "We are dying, Captain Hayes." The words fell like stones in still water. Arlen turned to face her. Vedra's mandibles clicked in a pattern that indicated deep distress. "Not in battle. Not from conquest or defeat. We are dying because we have forgotten how to live. For 3,000 years we have been warriors. We have perfected death, but in doing so, we have lost something essential." She moved to the barrier, one talon gently touching the transparent surface. "Our young hatch already knowing how to kill? They learn strategy before they learn joy. They master weapons before they understand play. We have bred ourselves into a corner, Captain. We are the deadliest species in the galaxy, and our children do not know how to be children." Arlen felt the weight of her words. "What does this have to do with humanity?" "We have watched your species for 60 years since you joined the Galactic Council. We have seen things that perplex us." Vedra's eyes seemed to soften if such a thing were possible. "We watched human soldiers adopt the orphaned young of their enemies during the Draxian conflict. We observed human colony ships that carried seeds and livestock from 1,000 different worlds, preserving species that were not their own. We monitored your response to the Cascade Plague, how humans risked infection to care for species they had never even met." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice carried an emotion Arlen hadn't expected. "Hope. You are not the strongest species. You are not the smartest or the fastest or the most advanced. But you have something we lost millennia ago. You care, not just for your own but for others. It is not weakness as we once believed. It is a different kind of strength. Arlen looked back at the eggs, understanding beginning to dawn. You want us to help raise your young? Not just help, Vedra corrected. We want to entrust them to you. Completely. We want human families to foster Cathali hatchlings. We want our children to grow up in human schools, human homes, human communities. We want them to learn what we cannot teach them anymore. How to value life, not just how to take it. The magnitude of what she was asking hit Arlen like a physical force. Matriarch, do you understand what you're proposing? The council will see this as, I don't even know what they'll see it as. Many will think it's a trap, some kind of infiltration strategy. Let them think what they wish. Vedra's voice hardened with resolve. I am not asking the council. I am asking humanity. Will you accept our most precious treasure? Will you teach our children that there is more to existence than survival? Will you show them how to be gentle with things that are fragile? How to create instead of destroy? How to love something simply because it deserves love? Arlen thought of Earth, of the countless foster families he'd known growing up. He thought of humanity's strange compulsion to adopt everything from alien species to broken robots to plants that required constant care. He thought of the way humans cried at the suffering of creatures they'd never met, the way they would risk everything to save a single life. Yes, he said finally. Yes, we will. Vedra's entire posture shifted, a tension releasing that Arlen hadn't realized she'd been holding. The galaxy calls us the deadliest species, she said softly. But we know what we are. We are what happens when evolution values only strength. You humans. You are what happens when evolution remembers kindness. She placed one massive talon hand on the barrier, and Arlen placed his palm beside it, separated by the transparent wall and millions of years of divergent evolution, yet connected by something more fundamental than either. When the first eggs hatch in 3 months, Vedra continued, we will begin. Small at first, 12 families. But if this succeeds, Captain Hayes, you may be saving 2 species. Yours will teach mine how to live. And perhaps in protecting our young, you will remember why your compassion is worth preserving in a galaxy that often mistakes it for weakness. As Arlen looked at the eggs, at the future of the deadliest species in the galaxy resting in iridescent shells, he felt the weight of history shifting. Humanity had been given many titles in their 60 years among the stars. The upstarts, the peacemakers, the stubborn ones. But this would be something new entirely. This would be the day the galaxy's most feared species looked at humanity and said, these are the ones we trust with everything we hold dear. And in that trust, Arlen knew, lay the seed of something that might one day grow into a new kind of strength, one built not on fear, but on the radical act of caring for another's child as if it were your own.